Welcome back, my dudes. I was talking to my daughter about a campaign that she was going to run. Very first time DMing, and she was going to homebrew at that. And it got me thinking about these struggles that first time DMs go through and thinking about D&D as fun. So today I'm going to give you 26 Dungeon Master tips for beginners that I've learned along the way. And they've helped me become a better, more prepared, and more confident DM for my games. But before we get into that, if you find this video helpful or entertaining, then be sure to like, comment, and especially subscribe. Our little baby channel is starting to grow. We just passed 500 and we want you on our team. All right, so start the clock. Let's get to it. Number one, don't overuse dice. If the outcome is certain, you don't have to roll for it. Your players don't have to roll dice in order to drink a beer at the tavern. So why would they need to roll dice to climb a ladder? Number two, never hinge vital plot information on a roll. Rolls always go bad when they have to go good. So if your players need to find that hidden passage in order to advance the plot, then put footprints that walk into the wall. That way they can figure it out themselves without you having to just spoon feed it to them. But do not hinge it on a perception or investigation check because you're bound to be stuck because your players rolled badly. Number three, do not stress being original. Lean into the tropes. Borrow characters from movies and TV and books. Because you're using characters that you love and truly understand, it's going to elevate your DM ability to role play those characters. After all, you're running a game for fun, not writing a literary masterpiece. Number four, if you're going to homebrew your first campaign, and I suggest you do because homebrewing's fun and DMs get to have fun too, then make sure you start with the big bad evil guy, the villain of the story. Who is he? Flesh him out. What does he want? What is he trying to do? What has he already done? Then work backwards from there, cascading those actions down to your players. Because it's just really awesome when your players hear about something crazy, bad, or evil happening in another town that makes more sense later on because they've further down the plot. Number five, while you're writing that homebrew, keep in mind that your goal is to create problems for the players to solve. And those individual problems should be symptoms of the larger plot. And then always be open to creative ways your players want to solve those problems. I mean, sure, you expected the players to clear the goblin cave, but instead they rolled in, killed the hobgoblin leader, established dominance over the goblins, and now are in command of a goblin army. That's still cool. Number six, keep flavor text brief. You will lose your players' attention if you go too long on flavor text. So instead of spending 3 or 4 minutes describing this large dining hall, simply say it's a large ornate dining hall. It's got a giant table in the middle and place settings all the way down it. After all, we want to give our players some chance to fill in the blanks with their own imagination. Number seven, describe the room before you describe the monster in it, because the second you say there's a monster in the room, they have stopped listening to you. Number eight, as a DM, tell your players they should limit their backstories to about a paragraph. And if you intend to use their backstories as plot hooks, tell them to leave you some space. And they don't have to go into deep detail with the plot hook. It can be something as simple as, I was caught stealing in Waterdeep, and they've told me if I ever come back, they're going to cut my hands off. That one tiny plot hook is plenty for a DM to add some backstory into the campaign. Number nine, use time as a non-lethal way to add tension to your games. Tell your players they have to complete this quest within a day or two. Having that little extra push, that little extra rush will keep your players engaged, keep them interested in what they're trying to do and doing it in the most efficient way possible, which will also help to curb some of those people that like to long rest every other second. Number 10, do a session 0. I know everybody always says, do a session 0. I'm going to say it too, do one. It's helpful. It helps you to describe exactly what you want in your campaign and allows you as the DM to set some real ground rules, some real expectations for your players, how you want them to act and how they should expect you to act. Number 11, for your first time DMing, do not have more than 4 players at the table. You're not Matt Mercer, and your players are definitely not the cast of Critical Role. Number 12, speaking of Mercer, don't try to be like Matt Mercer. He's a pro. He quite literally makes a living doing stuff like this. Instead, be you, and encourage your players to help you elevate the story. Number 13, when you're prepping, prep bullet points, not scripts. It's very tempting for you to want to script out an entire area, an entire scene, what everybody's going to say, what they're going to do, how it's going to work. The problem is the second you start getting in a habit of doing that, your players are going to start derailing your plans. And then you're going to be left at a disadvantage when you're trying to improv. Number 14, beware of the action economy in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It is heavily weighted on number of combatants on either side. So when you're planning your next encounter, your next battle for your players, then just be aware that if you outnumber your players, the chances of that encounter becoming lethal increase considerably. Number 15, when in battle, especially with new players, use the tactics and the actions of your monsters in order to help educate your players on what they can do in combat. Have them use some of those often forgotten actions like dodge or hide. Have them interact with the world around them, throw rocks, duck behind a boulder. When your players see what these monsters are doing, they're going to realize that they can do it too, and your combats are going to elevate from then on. Number 16, keep your monsters mobile and try to get in their head. I mean, if you were a hobgoblin, you just get punched in the face by a warrior. Would you then turn and attack the mage? No, you're probably going to hit the warrior back. Number 17, print out your monsters. I do it for every game. Every time I have an encounter, I print out the monsters. It's just a good way for you to jot down hit points, track them, and to keep any notes on any condition. Number 18, and this is a big one. When you have a complex monster, one that has legendary actions or resistances, they have multiple attacks or spells, go ahead and script out the first few rounds during your prep before the game. That way when you get into combat, you can be fast. You can be very quick in the decisions you make so your players aren't having to sit there and watch you while you read down through a complex stat block. Number 19, you don't remember a specific rule? That's okay. Just make up something fair on the spot. Make a note about it, and after the game, go ahead and look up the official rule. And then before your next game, let them know the true ruling on it. That way when you have to do it again, then it's understood from everybody exactly out of the rule. Obvious exception would be if there's something absolutely pivotal to the plot, like a player death. Number 20, keep notes on important events that happen in your campaign and do so chronologically. Just have a file where you just type in line by line what happens in the campaign. That way when your players derail your plans, you can review in order to find a way to hook them back in. Number 21, consider not using a map for everything. I've done an entire video on this. I think they're overrated outside of combat. I think they increase your prep time when you try and find a map for everything. Let's say a market. Unless there's combat that's going to happen in the market, then you really don't need a map for the market. You could do a theater of the mind. It'd be infinitely easier to do, and you're relying on your players' imaginations instead of staring at a map. And if you're going for a specific look and feel, then go find a picture of what the market would look like and hold it up. Tell them to picture that instead. That way everybody has this shared vision of where they're at. Number 22, probably one of the biggest tips I have for you is to learn to do the paper shuffle. When your players ask you about a guard and you did not prep for them, you don't have a name for the guard, learn to pick up some papers and say, oh, it's in my notes, let me find it. And you just start shuffling the papers while you're thinking in your head who this guard is and what he's about. Your players want to believe that everything they do in the game is written down. It is official, it's canonical. So we want to do everything we can to avoid them knowing that it's improv, it's made up on the spot. Number 23, keep a list of NPCs, random NPCs, names, race, and maybe a line, a sentence about what they look like or what they're after. You can use tools like GPT to generate these in no time. And they're especially helpful when those players start asking you the names of every single person they see. And number 24, regarding improv, do everything you can to avoid your players knowing that you're improving anything. You always want them to believe that everything you're doing was planned for. Especially with NPCs, whenever you introduce them, whether it's somebody that's not written or is written, introduce them with the same kind of passion, the same vigor that shows the players that this is planned for. Because what you don't want is your players to think that you're making up this NPC on the spot and they're just going to disregard them. Especially if your campaign, your adventure includes some plot twists. You don't want your players ruling out NPCs as unimportant. Number 25 is one that is hard earned for me. You will almost never ever get where you plan to get to in a session. The players have an amazing ability to waste tons of time, but do not rush your players through a scene or a moment because there's something you're trying to get to, something you're really excited about. I've done that myself, and it really creates a very bad session where the players begin to lose their agency. And number 26, your players are never going to do what you think they're going to do. After all, there are 4 of them and only 1 of you, and their perspective on the world in which you are weaving around them is completely different from yours. Just be ready to roll with your players' insanity. I've had sessions where inside of Wave Echo, which is a very hostile cave, and players hear voices on the other side of a door, and instead of making any plan whatsoever, they just walked up and knocked on the door, and chaos ensues. But hey, that's D&D. And for a little bonus tip, your players are having fun. They're enjoying every part of this. The fact that you stepped up to be in DM is admirable. You're taking time out of your schedule in order to prep for these games, and you need to not worry so much about whether or not your players are having a good time, especially during the session. That thought in the back of your mind can really start to distract you if you're worried that your players are not engaged with your content. And if you are going to worry about it in between sessions. Get with them, talk to them, figure out what's going wrong if anything is going wrong. But when it comes to game night, you tell your players to make sure to thank you and bring snacks because it's game night and you're the almighty dungeon master. And that's it, guys. Those are my tips for the new DM. Have anything you want to add it in the comments. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed, please do so and give us a like. You guys have a killer week, and I'll see you guys next time.